Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Blackpacking. Today I have Ashley with me.
Hello.
And Ashley's another podcaster. We actually connected a few months ago, several months ago, when we were trying to link up and do an episode together, but COVID and life, you know.
I forgot how we hooked up, how we connected. I can't even remember.
Facebook.
Yeah.
I think a travel group.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
probably yeah.
Yeah. So, and Ashley, he travels, and I remember at the time you were telling me that you teach kids and you take them on trips,
Yep.
and all of that's kind of been affected a little bit.
Yeah, put on hold for a
So,
second.
yeah. And I'm sure like once it resumes, that's going to look a lot different than how you were doing it before.
Yeah.
So where are you at now with it?
Well, I have my own travel company, so I do two different things. So my life is kind of divided into professional and personal, right? So professionally, I take students out of the country for my job. That's part of my job at the school that I work. And so right now, for the near future, that's on pause.
Right.
And personally, I plan to lead group trips. About 60% of those trips are adults and families, and then 40% is probably just students.
Yeah.
So that's on pause until 2021. So I got some stuff in the works for 2021, where I just kind of moved some stuff back.
Yeah.
So hopefully, the next year will be looking better than 2020.
Yeah.
And then we can get on the road and get in some planes and start seeing some places.
Yeah. Where was your last trip before the shutdown?
That's interesting. My last trip before the shutdown was Panama, and I did that in March. So I was actually supposed to go to Italy. I was taking a group of 8th graders to Italy, and then Italy blew up. And you remember Italy had
they had like the highest cases.
The quarantine happened in Italy, so it was just like one area, and then we're debating whether or not could we just go to the south of Italy and still have a good time,
right?
Or do we just go someplace completely different? And then ultimately we decided let's just stay away from that part of the world because I think at that time people still really weren't sold that it was going to come here and come here as fast as it did.
Right.
So we shifted and went to Panama instead, and it was an amazing trip. One of the best trips I've had with students over the course of my 11, 12 years traveling with students.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Where in Panama did y'all go?
Of course, we went in Panama City.
Yeah.
We stayed there for a couple of days. We went to the countryside, to Chitre.
Okay.
So we stayed in Chitre and learned about some of the traditional Panamanian cultural things, such as the drum making, the dressmaking, the dance. And then we came back and went to Portobello. And Portobello is on the coast, and that's where they have Black Christ at Portobello. So
really,
so the thing about Portobello is the settlers came and they tried to leave Panama, and they couldn't leave. So one day it was just like the weather was so horrible, and then the next day it was just something else. It just kept mounting up, and so they threw Black Christ off of the boat, and then they were able to leave. And so now the people there, they make this huge Mecca-like thing, like a trek from Panama City. People really walk because the traffic is so bad. And you go there, and it's just sitting in, there's two. One is sitting in kind of like this not murky, but kind of like this waterlogged bog kind of area, and then there's one in the church. And they go there and pray to Black Christ there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
That is dope. I actually, the last place I traveled to outside of the country was Panama. That was in January. It was the middle of January this year. That was before like anything. Like I was like starting the year out right. I was like January travel, like February what's next? And then like it's we all know how it went down.
Yeah.
But I didn't when I was in Panama. I didn't hear about that. I was very north, almost like to like Costa Rica. I was in the Coffee region.
Yeah.
Spent a few days up there, and then a couple days in Panama City, and no one told me about the Black
No,
Crowd.
yeah, we went up there. We also went to the Imbala village, which is the traditional Panamanian people. So like they're Native American people compared to ours. And so we went to that village and spent probably 3 or 4 hours there.
Really? How how is that? Because I kind of heard, I mean, just that the Native Americans in Panama, they're treated pretty poorly,
So
and like
they're
really disrespected.
they're in what is considered now a national park, which
Okay.
means they can't do their traditional things, right? So they can't fish. I'm sorry, they can fish, but they can't farm, right? So
Okay.
they can't farm the land because it's a national forest. And
Wow.
so now their income really now is based on tourism, which is, and if you think about it, it's kind of demeaning a bit, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to put on these shows, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to get money and to have people come and buy
Yeah.
their things.
Yeah.
Rather
Like
than,
kind of like sell their culture and like who they are.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Put their culture as a price, right?
Yeah.
But what we did and what I do when I travel, especially with students, is try to understand that that's going on
Yeah.
and force my students to really be uncomfortable and get to know people that are there.
Yeah.
So we just ended up going to the school,
Yeah.
and we sat in the school while they had lessons in Spanish. You know what I mean? And then they had a break and we played soccer. And then after soccer, some of the kids were over playing hide and seek, and some were playing soccer, some were playing other
Yeah.
games. And it was like a real good opportunity for them to just really get to know those students that were there,
Yeah.
and not in a sense of ogling at them and kind of like, ogling and like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
you're indigenous, like, you know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
It was just really a connecting piece where we
Yeah.
could just say, hey, you're a human, I'm human, let's share.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's a lot easier with kids, especially because they're so young and they're still like taking that in.
Yeah.
And sometimes, how old are the kids?
So those are eighth grade
Eighth
students,
graders, yeah.
seventh and eighth grade
Yeah,
students.
that's like a really good age to, I think, really expose a child to like a different culture and have them be like, oh, you're my age. Like we both like, even though you live here and I live here, we both like soccer. You know, and so that's great. What do you think they take away most from the experience?
It's interesting. I just did a presentation about travel and what it does for my students. So two things, right? So the education component, right? So we go and we do some of those same tourist things where they go and learn about the history of where we're going, right? My school is a little bit different because they get that within their curriculum, so they learn that foundation. But since we had to pivot so quickly because of COVID, they didn't get that foundation. So the education piece is one of the things that they get, but the relationship piece is the biggest piece for me. I think is the most important piece.
Okay.
The relationship piece on twofold. The relationship they build with their other students, their peers who are traveling with them.
Right.
They begin to. I put them in different groups. I put them in different rooms, and so they begin to interact with people they don't necessarily interact with at school. Because they didn't choose to be in these groups. I chose them. So they're learning about them.
Yeah.
But then also the relationships that are built with the students and the people who are at that place that we travel to. There were several times where the kids said they didn't want to leave. There were a lot of tears. I mean, there are pictures that I got where I had, 3 or 4 of my students and 3 or 4 students that were there, and they were just laying in the grass, looking at phones together, looking at pictures. You know what I mean? Like you could not tell one student from the next.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, that is the beauty of breaking down all those invisible barriers that we build. And I think for me, what I take from it is the fact that I am bringing students there. And to be fair, in my personal life, it's mostly black students. In my professional life, it's mostly white students.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm bringing students there who wouldn't necessarily travel the way that we're traveling and make those connections.
Right.
But they also are leaving with a relationship that they want to foster. Like they got WhatsApp numbers and phone numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then when we leave, the students that we leave, they are left also because we have connected with them and said, hey, I see you as a person, right? And I value you. And I live far away from you. However, this is how you can talk to me if you want to talk to me again, because I want to talk to you as well.
That's so special.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure they'll end up reconnecting,
God,
later on.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit more about your podcast.
Yeah, so
Traveling Incognegro.
Yeah, that's it. You got it. Yeah. So So I started a podcast around this COVID thing, and I initially just started it for me. You know what I mean? Because I like to tell my story,
right?
And I like to connect with people who have like-minded stories and like-minded visions.
Yeah.
I travel differently in my personal life, right? I like to um, immerse myself in the culture, and I like to learn about people. I like to make connections and build bridges. And I travel to places more than once because I want to build those relationships.
Right.
And so I wanted to tell that story. And it's Traveling Incognegro because it's a play off incognito, right?
Yeah.
Like traveling undercover, traveling like, disguise, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it really very much is as a Black person because we have this American passport that gives us so many privileges, right? But on the flip side of that, we still are traveling Black, right? And then so it's like we're Black, but underneath that, you know what I'm saying, we have this American passport that affords us all these privileges that we can get, and people don't think twice when they see us, right? And I try to also talk about and highlight the issues that people of color, particularly Black people, what they face in the countries that I travel to, right? Whether I'm traveling to Europe and we're talking about Africans who are there, or I'm traveling to Guatemala and we're talking about native Mayan people, or I'm traveling to Ghana and I'm talking about Black people. Like, what do those people have to deal with when I'm not there, right? And I want to make sure that I address those issues, that I'm aware of those issues, and that when I'm there, I don't exacerbate or exploit anybody that's there.
Right.
So this is just a story, just about, traveling and, having fun, but also like, what can you do? And at the end of the podcast, I always say, whether you travel with me or whether you travel with me or not, travel consciously.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very important that you are conscious about your footprint of this world.
Absolutely. And especially, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. That happens. But yeah, how many episodes have you done so far?
I think we're 6 or 7 right now. 6 or 7. Yeah.
And it's just you?
It's just me. So
how's that working out? Because I have a hard time with it just being me.
That is why I pushed back starting it for so long, because I was like, am I able to hold a podcast by myself, right?
Yeah.
So the initial, the first episode was just me talking about why I started traveling, why I started Traveling Incognegro, why I started the podcast. And it was based off of 3 experiences that I had as a Black person traveling.
Right.
So then I said, what can I do after that? And so I started to think that maybe I need to start interviewing other people because I can still interweave my experiences and allow other people to tell the same story without me having to say it.
Yeah.
So after the first episode, I started interviewing other people. So there's an episode with this woman, Jackie O, and she is a slow traveler with her daughter, Ruth, and Ruth is like 2 years old, and she travels with her all over the world, and she's like has a destination independent lifestyle with Ruth. Ruth is learning Spanish and the native Guatemalan Tutsu Hill, and there's another episode with a friend of mine. He has this company called Fun Weird Science, and he travels around the world and exposing kids to STEM, and he talks about just being able to provide his love for science for other people. There's another episode with these expats. They live in China right now. They are married and they left the United States and decided to do this international school life, and they teach international schools and travel around the world. So it's just my way of being able to tell my story and connecting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got, since you are also a fellow podcaster.
Alrighty.
Shout out to Poddex once again. I got these from Podfest. Interview cards to kind of, ask different questions. I think that it's really fun. And I'm wondering, I think there are about 50 cards in here. I'm hoping to get through all of them by doing these episodes.
Right,
so I'm gonna pick a card, and then I'm gonna have you pick one as well.
And then we just ask each other a question. Okay, cool.
And then I got a fun little game, like trivia game with some knowledge. It's one new element I'm adding to this new season of the podcast because I want people, they learn about me, they learn about you, but I also want to be able to like teach people things as well.
Yeah.
And it's also like a fun way for me to learn about the history of different places. And I remember I did a podcast with someone, and we were talking about how like we were never into history until we started traveling.
Yeah.
Once you started traveling, you're like, oh, how you're taught about places in school is a lot different than once you travel there.
Yeah.
And like this whole podcast thing, especially it being travel based, is like also like this research project, like a constant thing. I did the podcast with Haitian American Diaries, and like I said, I wanted to research Haiti before I interviewed two Haitian girls.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's been kind of how I'm filling my time with like learning about the history of different countries as much as I can, especially since I'm not traveling to them. So I'm gonna ask you a question.
Alrighty.
Let's see what we got here. If you had to delete all but 3 apps from your smartphone, which ones would you keep? This is a good question.
That's a great question. All but 3. Okay, so it's gonna be pretty easy for the first one, I think. All but 3. I would not delete Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram has to stay, I think.
Yeah.
I would not delete my banking app. I need to make sure I'm staying abreast of what's happening with that. The third one is a more difficult question. I don't know. Audible. I do a lot of audiobooks, and so that's my way of relaxing, and there's podcasts on there as well.
Yeah.
And, so those are the 3. So Instagram, banking app, Audible. That's it. Yeah, that was pretty easy though.
That was pretty easy.
Think about it. What about you?
So I have an iPhone, and I actually realized like my first 3 immediately, because without these 3, there's actually no point in me having the phone. So the ability to call people, the green cell phone app, that's my first one, and then iMessage, because once again I can't use the phone and I can't message you. And then the third would be email, the email app, my Gmail, or you know what I'm talking about. So without those 3 apps, I pretty much just have.
I have an Android, so I can so just like your phone, you have a MacBook too, so you can actually get calls on your
That's
MacBook.
true. Hello, pick up.
So FaceTime audio.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you one. All right, if there was a sandwich named after you, what would be on it?
Oh,
that's a good question too.
That is a good question, but I'm so basic, especially when it comes to sandwiches.
No, but you're vegetarian too, right?
Yeah.
So you can spice some stuff up.
It would have a spicy sauce on it, that's for sure. But then it would just probably have a couple different cheeses, lettuce, and then tomato. Because that's how basic I am. Yes.
Okay, well, what kind of cheese then?
Like a smoked Gouda or like pepper jack.
There you go. That'd be a good sandwich though.
Yeah. So I'm like really basic. I actually don't eat a lot of sandwiches because I feel like I can't like load it up, and I don't like onions.
So vegetarian and eat sandwich, that's like the go-to.
I know it's weird.
You can get the same from just putting some vinegar.
Yeah.
And some jalapenos. Or
jalapenos for sure. I don't eat too many sandwiches at all. I'm a pretty boring vegetarian. I like because I don't like onions, like I said. And I also don't like mushrooms. But like spices, like I love spicy things, so anything that I can like make spicy makes my bland dish be.
I love spicy too.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah.
So let's play this little game. The game doesn't have a name. It's just pretty much a trivia game on the flags around the world. You know which flag this is?
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah.
And if you have listened to any episode of Blackpacking, you know that I love South Africa. It's one of my favorite places. And I actually did some research on the flag and the black, yellow, and green. Do you know about that?
The black is for the people.
Mm-hmm.
The green is for the land, and I think the yellow is gold or riches or something.
Yeah, and those were Nelson Mandela's political parties' colors, so that's why they're on the flag. And then the red, white, and blue are the European colonists as a part of their flag. And the Y is kind of like a merging of the two, joining of them coming together. So I thought that was like really fun to learn about that. So South Africa flag. Now this one.
Now that one making me really confused. Is that Guatemala?
No, it's very close.
El Salvador?
Go a little bit further south.
Argentina?
Argentina.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And this flag I thought was really cool. I've been to Argentina. I like it. And the blue stripes represent the skies of Argentina, and then the white is the snow caps of the Andes Mountains. And then the face sun is a Incan god.
Yeah.
I hope I remembered that correctly throughout my studies. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Third flag.
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Do you know what the colors represent in this flag? So like Nigeria's flag is like pretty straightforward and simple, like two colors. The green just kind of represents the vegetation of the land, and then the white is peace and unity.
That's dope.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
that's simple enough. Yeah. And I recently took a 23andMe and found out that I'm mostly Nigerian. Okay. So that's why I threw that flag in there.
That's dope.
This one.
That's a difficult one for me. I've never seen that before, but I'm going to guess it's a Middle Eastern flag or an Asian flag.
It's Nepal.
Nepal, okay.
And I chose this flag because as I was researching flags, this is the only country flag that is not in a rectangle shape. Fun fact.
I'll never forget that.
Yes, right? So it's like got this like double triangle thing going on, which is like representing the Himalayas, and at the same time representing Hinduism and Buddhism as their national religions, which I think is really cool.
Pretty dope, yeah.
So, and then
Switzerland.
No, it's very
Norway.
close. It's like shifted a little bit. It's actually Denmark.
I know.
Denmark.
Yeah.
And I chose this flag because it is the longest standing flag. Like it hasn't been changed at all since the original flag in 1612. So this is the original Denmark flag, and it has not changed whatsoever during the time period. So that's why I did that. So that was my little like fun trivia.
I love it.
And it was like fun researching the history.
No, I'm never going to forget that Nepal flag. That's going to stick with me. And Argentina too. Yeah. I knew it was South American or Central American because of the color.
Right.
But yeah, I guess Guatemala. And I should know the Guatemalan flag. So often. Yeah,
they got the light blue in their flag as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, and what's crazy about like country flags is like a lot of them do look very similar and have similar colors in them. You know, a lot of countries have white, blue, red. Those are kind of like the staples, and they're the most popular. But I appreciate you playing that little game with me.
No problem.
And coming on the show. Where can we find your podcast?
So you can find us anywhere on podcast. So it's just Traveling Incognegro. So traveling and then the word incognegro.
Yeah.
And then you can find me on Instagram at Abiri Tours.
Abiri Tours?
Abiri, Abiri.
Okay.
Tours. Abiri Tours.
Okay.
On Instagram. Yep.
Nice. And I guess everything is still up in the air. You don't have any plans.
Well, we're
locked in as far as tours.
We moved now, so we just pushed everything back. So next year we'll have in 2021. We'll try to continue with the Cuba trip. We have 2 trips to Cuba that we had to cancel, so we're trying to put those back on.
Okay.
We had 2 trips to Guatemala also. We're trying to put those back on. We had a trip to Greece that's moved to spring break next year. So hopefully that will be on.
Okay.
Our trip to Rwanda, hopefully that's going to be rescheduled back next year as well. I haven't said anything about that one. And we have a trip to Egypt as well. So
hopefully I can make one of those trips
you
with
need
you.
to come on, man.
Yeah, but y'all should check out what Ashley's doing. And I think for me personally, I usually do like solo trips, but I'm kind of like nervous getting back into traveling with all of this. So I kind of want to go with like a small group,
Yes.
and kind of experience that and like be around people again.
Yeah.
Honestly,
And we do small groups. We have a. I mean,
yeah,
it becomes a really small extended family, man. So people who travel with me travel more than one time.
yeah, that's amazing.
I never travel with more than 12 people.
That's perfect.
So just have a good intimate group.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again for coming on the show. Thank y'all for listening, watching, wherever you are. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page and the podcast, blackpackingpodcast.com. Also, check out my Patreon at www.patreon.com/blackpackingpodcast. And until the next episode, y'all, I'm out. Bye.